Listen to the vibes.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Vibes. And I'd like to welcome here Phyllis Levitt, who is a psychotherapist and an author. And we're going to get to know her, have a great conversation. So, Phyllis, tell us a little bit more about you.
Well, thank you so much for having me here with you on your show. It's always a pleasure to share what I'm passionate about. I've been a psychotherapist for well over 30 years. And somewhere along the way, having worked with so much family dysfunction and intergenerational trauma, and looking at what makes a healthy family and what makes a dysfunctional or an abusive family, I started to see our country as a family of America, and really wanted to look at what's going on in America today through the lens of what makes a healthy family and what could help our country heal from some of the extremes of divisiveness and threats of violence that many people are suffering from today. And how could we bring some of the best principles of psychotherapy and nonviolent communication to a national conversation to help us reach across the aisle and work things out for the good of the country? Because that's what a healthy family does. Most people know that being human, we are not always going to agree. It's just in the nature of being a human being. And it's actually a healthy thing. We need more than one point of view. No one person or party or whoever has all the answers. And what we've found in the world of psychology is that when there's deep listening and the development of good listening skills, when people learn how to listen to each other the way they want to be heard and speak the way they want to be spoken to, and have an open mind and develop some compassion for where each other are coming from, relationships work out much better. And we all want good, healthy, safe relationships in our own life. And how could we manifest more of that in our country?
How do we do that nowadays? Because even if you're open to listen to the other person, once you start that conversation and you say, well, this is how I believe, then all of a sudden you're being called every name in the book. How do we start this conversation?
Well, I think that's a really good point because that's a lot of what's happening today. And, as a psychotherapist, I've really worked hard to formulate for myself and use in my own life to the best of my imperfect ability, some of the skills of good listening that make it safe to disagree. Because right now we're not safe to disagree for the very reason that you're talking about, because people attack one another, they humiliate each other, they try to overpower each other. And these are all dysfunctional family dynamics. In a healthy family, you don't beat somebody into submission. Sometimes you have to draw a line, have a good boundary, and say, no, I can't do that. Um, but I want to know more about where you're coming from. Why do you feel that way? What's important to you? Is there an underlying wound behind where you're coming from? Um, because so often when people become highly defensive or aggressive, they're really acting out an unhealed wound. And we know that so deeply in the world of psychology. Often when, like, for instance, if a couple comes to therapy and one person's really angry and raging and the other one's afraid of them, or they're being defensive back and they're fighting, usually what's underneath that is some kind of unhealed wound. I don't feel worthy. I don't feel lovable. I don't feel seen. I never grew up feeling like I had any power, and gosh darn it, I'm going to have that power in this relationship now. Or I was so overwhelmed as a child that I just freeze and I submit, and that doesn't feel good. And I want to have a voice and I want to have more power in the relationship. So, in the best therapy, you kind of dig underneath the defensive structure that's keeping people apart and separate and hostile and angry at each other. And you try to heal some of the wounds underneath that are generating these behaviors that are not functional, they're not relational, they don't bring people together, they don't make people feel safe or loved or valued, if that makes sense. So somebody has to hold the line and say, even if you're yelling at me and calling me names, I'm not going to pick that up and hurl it back at you. I'm going to hold some inner stance where I keep my own responsibility for my behavior, and I will speak to you to the best of my ability the way I want to be spoken to. And I will continue to do that, even if you're ranting and raving, or I'll leave. I'll say, thank you. I need to leave this situation. When you're ready to have a respectful conversation, I'm here. I'm ready to sit down and talk with you. And you'd be surprised how many times that actually works when one person really holds a boundary or a container of integrity and respect, that it will help other people come around. When one person picks up their defenses and the other one is on the offense, you just have a battle. And that's what we have now, a lot of.
My biggest problem is I try to avoid an argument. I will just automatically give in. Because
Mm,
I don't want a confrontation. I guess I saw too much of it growing up.
mm,
My first marriage was kind of that bickering all the time, and I
right,
got to the point where I don't want to argue. I will just say, okay, you win. But if I get backed into a corner, that's when my claws come out.
right.
So what do
Yeah.
I do?
Well, it's so interesting because I just created this conflict type quiz for people to take so they could get a sort of a handle on what their conflict type is. And, one of them is combative, highly aggressive. I'm going to argue with you. I'm going to try to win this battle with you. No matter what you say or do, I have to come out on top. That's the combative type. And I'm right and you're wrong. And of course, most of us think we're right and the other person's wrong. So it doesn't usually go anywhere. Submissive is what you're talking about. I'll just give in. I don't want to do this. I don't want to fight with you. Avoidant is another one, which is I'll just steer it in another direction, or I'll leave, or I just won't engage. Um, and another one, which I think a lot of people engage in, and many of us do all of these, at different times. But another really big one is called passive aggressive. So I'm not overtly combative with you, but I'll roll my eyes when you're talking, or I'll pick up my phone and text somebody while you're crying, or I'll say things that are like, oh, you're just like your father, you're just like your mother. It's a way of being aggressive toward the other person, but it's not owned. It's kind of sideways. Um, and all of these are what we play out, automatically and unconsciously based on the role models that we have. And the one that I think works the best is what I've called the mediating approach, which is related to what I said earlier. I'm just going to take responsibility for myself. I'm going to say what I need. I'm going to say what I believe. I'm going to listen to you with as much of an open mind as I can. And that's really hard to do when I disagree with you. Believe me, we know that, right? Because we all think we're right and we all think the other person is wrong, but they think we're wrong and they're right. So I think it's holding this place of responsibility for myself that is the key to navigating conflict. And it may be that we just have to leave each other in peace. But if you've had this experience in a relationship in your life where you care about each other, and that's the bottom line, for we have to start caring about each other. And I think that's missing. It's like the sometimes the agenda is just I'm going to win. I'm going to win this argument. I'm going to make you feel bad. I'm going to make you submit or go away or whatever I'm going to do to you. I think we have to start caring about each other. If you've ever been in a relationship where there is mutual care, then there's an incentive to come to some agreement, to compromise, to listen more deeply, to develop more empathy or compassion, and to reconnect. And that's what I think is so missing today in our country on so many levels. And yet we all want that kind of loving, safe connection in our own lives. So, can we translate that to the larger collective and really start talking about what we could all gain from investing in that kind of loving, safe connection across the aisle, in business, in houses of worship, in schools, on the playground, in our own lives, in our communities, because that's the environment that people thrive in.
When it comes to values, especially, I used to preach,
Oh,
and I'm back on a spiritual path now. I had walked away, but I'm very strong in my beliefs.
uh-huh.
Now, I'm not hateful towards anyone by any means, but there are certain things that I believe that I just can't compromise on. How do I convey that to the other person?
I think that's part of what the challenge is for us human beings when we do have differing values or differing beliefs or different ways of living life or doing things. Somebody might be a vegetarian and they really are opposed to, eating animals. But they don't necessarily make war on the people who eat meat. You're not making war on the people who don't share the value or the belief that you have. And I think that's part of the challenge for us is, can we let each other live in peace? I don't agree with you. You don't agree with me. Can we still be neighbors? Can we treat each other with respect? Can we not bomb each other's houses, or, you know what I mean? Or
Mhm.
vilify each other in the news? I think one of the big challenges for the human race, and this is really a psychological challenge that we've sort of made ideological, but it's really a psychological challenge. It is, can we tolerate diversity? Can we tolerate our own distress when somebody doesn't agree with us? Because that's really the challenge. And I think that's not a lot of what's role modeled around us. That if somebody disagrees, I have a right to be furious and assault them because they're wrong and I'm right, rather than, can I tolerate what that's like for me, that you don't believe the way I do? You don't think the way I do. You don't behave the way I do. And unless someone is actually injurious, if they're assaulting you or they're, destroying your property or something like that. But if they're not doing you any harm, can we learn to live in peace with our differences? To me, that's an enormous psychological challenge, which it sounds like you're doing the very best you can. And I think that's wonderful. And would imagine that the people that you love in this way really appreciate your ability to stay loving in the face of something that you don't agree with.
I look at it like this. My wife and I, for the most part, we're on the same page about everything. But there
Mm,
are some things that we do not agree on. But
for
that
sure.
doesn't mean we're going to get a divorce over it.
That's right.
I mean, she has her way of thinking on certain things, and I have my way of
Right.
thinking of things, and
And what
we
would you say
still.
that quality is that you both embody that allows that to work? Because that's what we're looking for. Does that make sense?
I think, well, number one, we're both very family oriented, and we're also very spiritual. So I think that's probably
Yeah,
the spirituality part of it is probably that one thing that really holds us together.
that's beautiful. That's beautiful. And I love what you just said. So you said we're very family oriented. What if, as a country, we were very family oriented to the family of America? What if we looked at one another, with our spiritual values, with our hearts open, with our investment in the quality of safe and loving family? What if we brought that to our country? It would be amazing. We'd be safe. We could thrive. We could see the best in one another and not focus on primarily or solely on the things we disagree on or don't like about each other, because that's not going to go away. It's how I handle it.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that media and social media has a huge role in the reason why we are the way we are. Is I
Yeah,
mean,
I
watch
don't.
watch the news.
I
Look how
know.
they talk. You know,
I
look at shows like The View. I mean, they literally said, if you have somebody in your family that doesn't vote this way, then don't have anything to do with them anymore. And I'm like, are you kidding me?
Right. I know. I think it's very, very sad. And but I think this is one of another great challenge that we face here in America with our social media and probably globally as the human race. And that is that technology can be amazing. You know, global communication is amazing. I had to go to the card catalog to find a book when I was a kid, and if it wasn't in the library, I just didn't get that information, right? I can hit a button on my computer and I get an automatic, instantaneous, reaction of whatever, right?
Right.
So technology, and that's just the tip of the iceberg of what technology can do. Technology is amazing, but it's only as healthy as we are. It's only as healthy in its use as we are. And I think we have to look at that. If technology is being used in ways to divide and conquer and vilify and make certain people feel inferior or outcast or whatever, then we have to look at the human psyche that's generating that. Because it's people that are manifesting through the social media. So to me, media is an amazing tool and it's being used in very dysfunctional ways because some of our innate mental health right now is not healthy. It's not healthy. And so it's being used in a way that's destructive. And we can call that out without hating anyone. We can say whatever can be used for good or ill. Let's commit to the good use of this. What furthers relationship? What furthers peace? What furthers love? What furthers understanding? One of the things that I think about is none of us want to be in a relationship with someone who doesn't like us, who doesn't see the good in us, who doesn't promote our welfare, who doesn't make us feel safe. We don't want that in our own lives, but we're generating that all over the media and in some of our larger community and governmental and whatever business organizations. And I think we have to look at that disconnect as a mental health issue, not an ideological issue, which is what is fueling these terrible divides.
Oh, I thank God we didn't have social media when I was in school.
Yeah.
I- If it's this bad now, just to imagine what it'd been like if we'd had it for 40
Yeah.
years.
Yeah, I know. It was a really different world. It was a really different world. We didn't have any devices when I was a kid. We went outside and played in in our backyard, right? And there's some of that's really sad that it's missing.
Well, there's a lot of good that comes from technology, like you said,
Right. Right.
and it makes our life convenient. But let's just like at the grocery store. I know I've said this a million times. I hate those self-checkout lines. I would rather spend a few extra minutes in line and be face to face with another human being than to do it all on a machine myself.
I'm
And
so glad you said that because I'm the same way. I'm the same
right.
way. And I was so sad. I went into a big box store the other day and there was only one checkout aisle with a person and all the rest had been automated. And I just was like, oh God, this is not the world I want to go into. It's just not.
Well, they're pushing for you to be able just to go into the store, put whatever you want in the basket, and then be able to walk straight out the door without even having to go through a checkout line. So it's even
Oh,
colder.
wow. Okay, I don't know.
Right.
Yeah. And again, it's the same issue. Is like just because we can do it technologically, is it healthy for us as human beings to keep eliminating the personal aspect of our lives? I don't think it is. We need each other. We need connection. We need communication. We need a feeling of belonging. I don't think human beings are wired to live in a highly automated world. I really don't.
No, I don't like it. And besides, when you're when you go up to a checkout counter and the person behind the counter they may be having a bad day, and you might say that one thing
That's
that
right.
changes their whole day. Because I like to joke around with the person. You know,
Mhm.
they'll say, "Well, would you like your milk in a bag?" And I'm like, "No, leave it in the jug. It's a lot less messy that way." And they'll
Right,
look at me kind of funny, and then they might
right,
get it and
right.
crack a smile. You know, you just never know. That person may be already feeling isolated, and you've made them smile, and you may have kept them from going home and doing something stupid.
I say exactly what you just said so many times. I totally agree with you. We, those small interactions can make or break somebody's day. I've said this very often. So I love what you just said because I'm the same way. I try to be super friendly. And I also really appreciate when I go through a checkout line, if the person who's behind the register is really friendly with and upbeat with me. I love that. And it's just these little exchanges. I'll never see that person again, but we had a moment of appreciation and caring, that just lit up that moment in our day. And one of the things that I've shared a lot is that, because I've been a therapist for so many years and I've worked with so much really intense abuse and neglect that people have suffered in their childhood, that we don't know. You look at that person behind the checkout or the person standing in line in front of you or parking their car or whoever they are, you don't know their history. We don't know. Many people are just hanging on by their fingernails to get through the day because they're suffering, from past trauma, from present trauma, from inability to find a good job or difficulty with their children or addiction or whatever they're going through. And we can be that change agent. We can be that loving moment for each other. And I think it really makes all the difference in the world.
Well, we already saw the effects of COVID when people were being told to stay home and you couldn't see another
Right.
person's face. And we had, I want to say it was either two or three different people that ended their own lives in our neighborhood alone.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
My grandson, he was born right at the beginning of that. So for the first 2 years of his life, he never saw outside of the home somebody without a mask on.
Wow.
So I mean, we're out and we're communicating with each other, and things are bad enough as it is now. When you isolate people like we did during COVID, it makes things even worse. So this new technology, yeah, it's convenient, makes things faster, but I think it's going to hurt us in the long run.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think we have to look at the cost benefit analysis of all this stuff. Um, I think about this when I think of all the horror movies that are out there and little children seeing these terribly violent things when nobody, is monitoring what they're watching. And I think just because we can do this, should we? Is it good for us? And I always say it this way: are we feeding each other good food on an emotional level, on a mental level, on a spiritual level, on a community level? And what is good food? The bottom line, and of course, there's many elements to good emotional food for human beings. And I talk about all this stuff in detail in my book, um, which is called America in Therapy for your listeners. I'd love them to check it out if they can. Um, I talk about what's good food for human beings. It's love, it's safe belonging, it's good boundaries, it's a commitment to nonviolence, it's tolerance of our diversity, like you brought up in the beginning, even if it's difficult. It's a desire to work things out and reconnect and stay connected. These are all the things that we want in our families, right? Um, and can we want that in our larger communities and in the family of America? And what would be the benefit for all of us if we had that as an agenda, not as a dogma, as an agenda?
I still remember as a child there being a person in the neighborhood that was just one of those real nasty people, and us kids doing something really nice for him, and all of a sudden it changed him because somebody
Wow.
did something nice for him, and all
Wow.
it took was love.
That's right. That's right. Have you ever heard of Father Greg Boyle?
Well, it's not ringing a bell with me at the
Well,
moment.
he would be somebody I think you might appreciate his work. He's a priest, and he is very famous now for his work with people who have left gangs in LA.
Okay.
And he created and still is running this, it's called Homeboy Industries. And he created this community of love and opportunity for people who have had terrible lives, and some of whom have committed terrible crimes and been released from prison, who had, abuse and neglect and addiction in their childhood and really no opportunity. And he created this community of love and opportunity and has turned people's lives around. And it's through love, it's through acceptance, it's through creating a spirit of safe belonging, with all kinds of opportunity for healing and job opportunities and all kinds of things that he does. And and it's such a good example that that's what heals. It's exactly what you're saying. Love is what heals, like your neighbor.
Do you have a website?
Does he have a website?
No, do you have a website?
Yes, I do. It's my name, Phyllis Levitt, PhyllisLevitt.com. And my book is called America in Therapy, A New Approach to Hope and Healing for a Nation in Crisis. And really, I'm just bringing all of these elements and skills and understandings that I've learned as a psychotherapist working with families and looking at how we could bring them to our country to heal some of these great divides that are causing so much pain and suffering, for untold numbers of people and their families, as you said, who are feeling like they need to be torn apart. And it's just very sad. And so, I feel like the whole field of psychology has so many answers that we're not yet using. And that's really why I wrote the book.
Are you still helping people one on one?
I'm retired from my practice, so I'm really committed right now to my book, um, possibly a second edition of the book, with more distinctions that I didn't include in the first book. And speaking, I've been on a lot of podcasts. I'm really trying to promote these ideas. And I'll tell you that the response has been overwhelmingly positive. People are hungry for some solutions rather than what feeds our great divides. I think people are really hungry for solutions. So I'm really committed to that.
I,
But I'm
I
happy to talk with anybody who wants to talk,
almost feel like people are pushed into, let's give you an example, the Hatfields and McCoys. You're a Hatfield, you're supposed to hate a McCoy,
Right,
and there's no getting past that. And
right.
we have to. We have to. We can't feel like you're in this camp, so I can't talk to you, and vice versa. But
Well,
um,
I think I'm sorry.
no,
Go
no, no.
ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was
Sorry.
just going to say, I think you gave a good example when you talked about your neighbor. It just takes one person sometimes to change that dynamic, one Hatfield to do a kind deed for a McCoy. You know,
Mhm.
um, we had I love it's this very similar example. We had a family camping trip, and the owner of the campground got really pissed off about something ridiculous and was screaming at all of us and threatening to throw us out of the campground. And we all just stood there and we just said, "We're sorry. We're so sorry. What can we do?" And then he would scream a little more, and we'd say, "We're just really sorry. What can we do to make this better for you?" And finally, he just stopped. He just stopped, and it was over. Like whatever happened for him, I don't know. But I think we just didn't grab that bait and fight back or threaten back or stomp out or do anything. We just held a loving ground, and it just ended the whole combative situation. And we can all learn to do that for one another. We can.
I'm definitely working on my anger issues, and I want this to be a better world. So definitely pray for me in that
I
sense.
will. Thank you for doing your great work. Um,
Well, this is an outlet as well. So I learn from so many folks, and it's making me a better person. So that's why I want to bring it to everyone. But I will put your links in the description to make it easier for folks to find you.
Great, thank you. Thank you. And thank you for what you're doing because we need all the help we can get from each other, right?
Yeah, we all need help. We do. And thank you. I also want to thank all you folks out there. If you are new to the channel, I hope you'll come back. Please hit that subscribe button for my regulars. You guys are awesome because you make it possible for me to do this. Till the next one, everyone, please take care. Be kind to one another. God bless and peace.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Listen to the Vibes. You can catch us on Buzzsprout or wherever you listen to your favourite podcasts, and on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook at The Vibes Broadcast Network